Hi everyone, Becky Summerfield here. I am back for another episode of Adventures in Eagle Territory, but actually today I am joining you from my territory in my backyard. I was actually doing some yard work, enjoying this beautiful day before we are forecasted to get a bunch of snow tomorrow on Easter Sunday. And while I was cleaning up some leaves and things like that, I actually uncovered some early spring blooms in my backyard that I wanted to show you. And if you're thinking, what on earth does that have to do with eagles? Well, please keep watching because I am actually going to tie it in somehow. And I think you might find it interesting and hopefully you'll enjoy a little bit of a twist on our typical eagle programming. So the first plant that I am excited to show you today, I unearthed in my backyard. I'm always really excited to see this plant come up every spring because it's one of my favorites. This is a wild red columbine, or also called an eastern columbine. This plant is actually a part of a genus of plants that include 60 to 70 different species. And it's typically found in woodlands or meadows, and it can be found throughout much of the northern hemisphere. When this plant blooms, the flowers kind of grow up and then droop down. This particular one is going to have red and yellow flowers, but they can have purple or fuchsia or pink flowers depending on the species. And the flower, although it droops down, it actually has some spurs that grow up in kind of spikes above, straight up from the downward drooping flower. And those spurs on the flower are actually where this genus of plants gets its Latin name, which is Aquilegia. And that comes from the Latin word, believe it or not, for eagle, which is Aquila. And that name is referencing those flowers' 5 spurs, which supposedly resemble an eagle's talon. But as any of us who are familiar with handling eagles know, that eagles actually just have 4 toes on each talon, but that's still a really cool connection to eagles nonetheless, of that Latin name Aquilegia coming from the Latin name for eagle, which is Aquila. So just a little ways away from the columbine plant or Aquilegia, I have found these little fiddleheads of a lady fern coming up, which are just so cool. The fiddlehead is the furled frond of a very young fern, and these are really cool examples of the Fibonacci sequence in nature. And so the Fibonacci sequence is a mathematical sequence which can be found in all over the natural world. Each of the numbers is in the Fibonacci sequence is the sum of the 2 preceding numbers. So for example, the sequence starts off as 0, 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13, 21, 34, and so on. So each of the preceding 2 numbers equals the one following it. And so if you tile this sequence on some squares or on a graph with the side lengths of the successive Fibonacci sequence, you actually produce a spiral. So you can look for the Fibonacci spiral in all sorts of things that can be found in the natural world, like the spiral that can be seen in a pine cone, or of a flowering artichoke or sunflower, or in like a snail shell. That's a really fun thing to do if you go out in nature. Look for spirals or look for things that represent this Fibonacci sequence. And that's just kind of some cool information about fiddleheads. But of course, I promised that I'd be linking these plants back to eagles. So let me just give that a shot right now. Now, this is actually a lady fern, which is a very common species of fern across moist, damp woodland areas across North America. But in the subtropical area of the earth, there is a species of fern that's called Petridium aquilinium, or eagle fern. And that fern actually gets its name from the fronds that when they grow to 1 to 3 feet, they are said to resemble eagle wings. Now, eagles actually have a wingspan of 6.5 to 8 feet, so maybe those fronds are just a little bit smaller than eagle wings, but if you use 2, you could possibly reach the wingspan of an eagle. And finally, this is going to be the last plant I show you today. This is called a bloodroot. There's actually 2 of them in this photo. So there's the bloodroot that is actually already blooming right now. And then this one is just starting to come up in the background. The bloodroot is a very early spring bloom. This is usually flowering by April, possibly even by March. The Latin name for bloodroot is Sanguinaria canadensis, and sanguineus is actually the Latin word that means bloody. So this plant gets its name, bloodroot and sanguinaria, from a very bright reddish orange sap that oozes out of the root or out of the stem if they're cut. That sap is actually poisonous if you ingest it, so do not eat bloodroot. But of course, because plants do not have blood, that's not actually a blood, it's just a sappy secretion. And this is how I am making my very loose and even a little bit gruesome connection to eagles, because of course plants do not have blood, animals have blood, and eagles are carnivores. They only eat animals for food. I don't think even an eagle would be enticed to eat bloodroot, even though it does have a very similar appearance to the blood of an animal. Thanks again, everybody, for joining me for this episode of Adventures in Eagle Territory, which was in my backyard. I want to encourage everybody to get outside and explore the great outdoors these days while safely social distancing, of course. Don't forget to look up in the sky to see what's flying around, as well as down on the ground to see what is growing. It's a really gorgeous world to explore out there. And I want to also remind you that the National Eagle Center is a nonprofit organization, so during this closure, we are still striving to provide the best care possible for the eagles that live with us. So if you would like to support the care of those ambassador eagles, you can go to nationaleaglecenter.org/donate, where you can make a contribution there or become a member of the National Eagle Center. And then when we are finally safely able to reopen again, you can come and join us with free admission. And thank you very much.